Hi all, welcome. Some of you will have already been welcomed because you're obviously here in this live event, but there'll be some of you watching the recording and also some of you listening for the first time on the podcast. So a warm welcome to everyone. We're recording this on Thursday, kind of early evening, around sort of 24 hours or so after the breaking news of the fan-led review that came out, the report by Tracy Crouch. And we just thought we'll kind of do a little bit of background context, what it means for Arsenal, what it means for the AST going forward. And yeah, we thought it could be quite useful. So I'm going to hand over to Chloe, who's going to sort of compare and going to kind of lead the questions, and myself and Tim will kind of give as much information as we can. Chloe, over to you.
Thank you, Akil. Tim, the long-awaited review has come out. What are your initial thoughts?
I think this is really good news for football fans, for AST members, and how we want to see the game going forward. Members might remember at the time of the Super League debacle, we got a meeting with Boris Johnson that helped to apply the pressure for that to be cancelled. But at the same time, we pushed the Prime Minister to do more on the ownership and governance of clubs. We actually made the point in the meeting to him that the AST is having more time talking to our Prime Minister than it had to Stan Kroenke, which is a bit ridiculous, but it made the point. And then he set up this review led by Tracy Crouch, what was called a fan-led review of ownership and governance. We did a big survey of all of our members, used that to inform oral evidence and a written response, made submissions to the inquiry, worked with other fan groups. And yesterday, Tracy Crouch published it. And I would say it's not got everything the AST asked for, but it's got the underpinning recommendation to create an independent football regulator, which is so important because that would be an organisation where the owners themselves aren't deciding all the rules and deciding all the decisions. And that allows for lots of positive things like more distribution of revenue across football, protecting the pyramid, golden shares for fans, better corporate governance at clubs, advisory boards, supported engagements with clubs, more on diversity, more for the grassroots. I think just across football, it's really good news. And it, as I say, it does very much represent what AST asked for. So I'd like to thank everyone who's following this for the help you've given so far.
And to pick up on the golden share point, why is this so important?
It would give Arsenal fans a say in really important decisions or changes that might happen at Arsenal. You might describe the golden share as like the 50+1. It is an overriding share in the constitution of the club on key decisions. Decisions like changing the club name, changing the club colours, changing the club badge. Really importantly, any decision to potentially move away from playing in Islington, and any decision to enter into a new competition, like a breakaway Super League, like a franchise arrangement. Those issues, it would be set out in law that they could only proceed if Arsenal put them to a vote or to a golden share arrangement of fans. So it's underlocking some of the things that we would hold truest to our hearts about Arsenal.
And Akil, why are independent non-executive directors so important?
I think every kind of business, whether you're a football club or not, needs people that are independent to kind of look at things from a different pair of eyes. You know, if you've been at a business or a football club a long time, you own it, you know the owners, you're not really independent, and you potentially, I'm not saying that you can't do a good job, but you might sometimes be a little bit biased and you might have a vested interest. Having independent non-exec directors just mean that there's people there who can actually look at it very, very clearly. You know, if you put me in the Arsenal boardroom, I probably wouldn't be able to look at it objectively. If you put me maybe in a boardroom of Tesco or Sainsbury's, suddenly I don't have that vested interest. I can probably look at it as quite fairly. So I think that's one of the big things. It also just ensures that the company's being run, you know, in the best way possible. So it's great for governance. yeah, I think everyone needs some independent, non-exec directors. It also brings in expertise as well, potentially expertise that potentially you haven't got. So the Arsenal board, is only 4 people. 2 of them are obviously Stan and Josh. So it could bring in some more expertise as well. And for me, it's a no-brainer. So I'm really glad to see that kind of in Tracy Badger's report. And hopefully that's something that will happen at Arsenal going forward.
And also, independent non-executive directors usually have a legal status in companies. They have a duty to consult and consider the views of stakeholders. And in football clubs, stakeholders, of course, are us, the fans. So I think if there were independent non-executive directors, it would immediately strengthen that link to Arsenal fans and ensure that we had a better conduit, a better dialogue with the boardroom.
And Tim, the report didn't include anything about shares back to fans. Do you think there's scope for that to be included in the future?
Well, of course, many AST members will want shareholders in Arsenal, and we think that's one of the really important ways that you can be a custodian in your club. I understand that, this issue was felt to be quite difficult, and it's not the easiest because it would require making someone who owns some shares sell them on to supporters, although we said it should be at the fair market price, so they're not losing anything. But that the people who wrote the report felt that a mixture of the golden share, the shadow advisory board, the independent regulator were providing the same protections in a different way. But we still cherish it. We still think it's important. So as this debate continues, we will be raising it, but it's kind of like it's not in the immediate scope now, so it will be more of a challenge to do that.
Okay. And what do you think around shares back to fans? Would it be a token gesture, or do you actually think it would be a significant development, Akhil?
I think it's not going to make a massive difference in terms of voting rights and stuff if you're only giving 1%, 2%, 5% even back. That 5% suddenly can't outvote the 95%. But it gives a sense of belonging. You can ask every shareholder who was part of the Arsenal shareholdings, or even the fan share scheme, who I guess would probably tell you that they felt they were part of their football club. It also gives you some transparency. There's things like the accounts and things that you have to do at Companies House. You have to do them earlier, which is potentially more efficient. So again, it just gives you a bit of a link back to your kind of football club. Potentially there's more trust there between kind of the owners and the fans as well. So it kind of is a token, but it's more than a token, because actually the benefits of that with the transparency and the sense of belonging is so huge. And to us football fans and stakeholders, there's nothing more we want than feeling part of our football club, because it's so important to us.
And Tim, what are the next steps in the process with regards to the fan-led review?
Well, the formal next step is that the government would need to introduce legislation to introduce the regulator. Now, it was really encouraging that in the House of Commons today, the Sports Minister answered a question on this report and said that that was what the government intends to do, and said would do it at pace. So they will draw up, hopefully, legislation. I would have thought a good guess would be you'd look to the Queen's speech next May when the government announces its timetable and see if the bill was in that. But what we need to do as the AST, and we will be contacting you all as members and giving you the opportunity to support us, is at the right time contacting members of Parliament, writing to the Department of Culture, Media and Sport, using social media and keeping some pressure on, first of all, to ensure the government does make good on its promise to do this, but also to try and, amend and change some of the proposals so that they most reflect what would benefit Arsenal fans and football. Things are always changing in football. There'll be different requirements. So I would say, this is going to take months, not weeks, and we will require the ongoing support of members, and we'll provide the materials and the advice on how to do that.
Yeah, I'll just add to that I mean, the job's not done. The Super League gave us a massive opportunity, which I think fans from all over the country absolutely took. Step one was good, that the whole report was commissioned. Step 2 was obviously giving evidence, which a lot of people did, including us. Step 3 was then actually getting the report out there, which it has been. Now step 4 is about keeping that pressure up, and step 5 is probably implementation, legislation. So we're probably at step 4, so about just over halfway, maybe you could say. So as Tim says, you know, it's massively important, and we'll now have our sort of planning around our campaigns around keeping that pressure on. And as Tim said, we'll provide you with materials, with templates and everything. And we'll as time will go on, we'll tell you exactly how you can help us, because ultimately, you know, we all need to do this together. So thank you for everyone that has offered help, and everyone who has kind of, certainly with the fans in message and stuff like that, using the assets and the social media hashtags. That's all been really helpful, because actually Tracy Crouch and the panel have seen all that, purely because we've made sure they've seen it by sending it to them. So things like that really do help and make a difference. So thank you to everyone.
Thank you both.
Thank you. That's the end of this bit. And for those who are on the live event, you'll slowly, or you'll in a second resume. And for those of you who aren't, have a great rest of the day. Thank you.